Dark night of the soul. In modern times, the phrase dark night of the soul is used to describe a crisis of faith or a difficult, painful period in one's life. The dark night of the soul, la noche oscura del alma, is a phase of passive purification of the spirit in the mystical development, as described by the 16th century Spanish mystic and poet Saint John of the Cross in his treatise Dark Night, Noche Oscura, a commentary on his poem with the same name. It follows after the second phase, the illumination in which God's presence is felt, but this presence is not yet stable. In the happy night in secret when none saw me, nor I beheld anything, without light or guide, save that which burned in my heart. This light guided me more surely than the light of noonday, to the place where he, well I knew who, was awaiting me, a place where none appeared. O night that guided me, O night more lovely than the dawn, O night that joined beloved with lover, lover transformed in the beloved. The active annihilation of the senses comprises the first of the classical 3 stages of the mystical journey, followed first by illumination, and then finally by union. The passive annihilation of the spirit takes place between illumination and full union, when the presence of God has already been felt but is not stable. We see this dark night in the story of Abraham. After his night battle with the 4 kings and the rescue of his nephew Lot, he had communion with Melchizedek, the king of righteousness. Later, God promised Abraham a son and an eternal inheritance in the Holy Land, and Abraham offered a sacrifice to commemorate God's promise. Genesis 15:9, and he said unto him, Take me an heifer of 3 years old, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. Genesis 15:10. And he took unto him all these, and divided them in the midst, and laid each piece one against another. But the birds divided he not. Genesis 15:11. And when the fowls came down upon the bodies, Abram drove them away. Genesis 15:12. And when the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram. And lo, a horror of great darkness fell upon him. Horror, ima, fright. Concretely an idol as a bugbear, dread. Fear, horror, idol, terrible terror. Genesis 15:17. And it came to pass that when the sun went down, and it was dark, behold, a smoking furnace and a burning lamp that passed between those pieces. We understand that it is in the middle of the dark night that the burning lamp arrives. It is the light that St. John of the Cross describes in his poem. This light guided me more surely than the light of noonday. A second example of the dark night is the story of Jacob, when he is returning home and he knows that he will encounter Esau, who has promised to kill him. Jacob begins to send all of his property ahead as a gift to his brother Esau. Finally, he even sends his wives and his children to Esau, and Jacob is left alone. That night, as Jacob sleeps, Jacob has an encounter with God. Genesis 32:24. And Jacob was left alone, and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of the day. Genesis 32:25. And when he saw that he prevailed not against him, he touched the hollow of his thigh, and the hollow of Jacob's thigh was out of joint as he wrestled with him. Genesis 32:26, and he said, Let me go, for the day breaks. And he said, I will not let thee go except thou bless me. Genesis 32:27. And he said unto him, What is thy name? And he said, Jacob. Genesis 32:28, and he said, Your name shall be called no more Jacob, but Israel. For as a prince hast thou power with God and with men, and hast prevailed. After that encounter with God, Jacob essentially became another person. He stopped being Jacob, the supplanter and schemer, and he became Israel, or God prevails. Like Jacob, we all wrestle with God. We want our own way. We want to follow our own schemes and plans. However, God has his own plan for us, and the best day of our life is when God prevails, because his plan for us is far superior to our plan. Also, we do not have the wisdom, strength, or ability to even accomplish our own plan, let alone God's plan for our life. However, God has the wisdom and the power to accomplish everything he has planned for us. And if we surrender to his plan, God is more than capable of accomplishing all his promises. Jeremiah 29:11, "For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end." Jeremiah 29:12, "Then shall ye call upon me, and ye shall go and pray unto me, and I will hearken unto you." Jeremiah 29:13, "And ye shall seek me, and find me, when ye shall search for me with all your heart." Roberto Assagioli states, "Before the full and final victory, however, the soul has to undergo another test. It must pass through the dark night, which is a new and deeper experience of annihilation, or a crucible in which all the human elements that go to make it up are melted together. But the darkest nights are followed by the most radiant dawns, and the soul, perfect at last, enters into complete, constant, and inseparable communion with the Spirit, so that, to use the bold statement employed by St. John of the Cross, it seems to be God himself and has the same characteristics as him. The best illustration of the dark night is just before the crucifixion of the Lord, when he is praying on the Mount of Olives. Luke 22:39. "And he came out and went as he was wont to the Mount of Olives, and his disciples also followed him." Luke 22:40. "And when he was at the place, he said unto them, Pray that ye enter not into temptation." Luke 22:41, "And he was withdrawn from them about a stone's cast, and kneeled down and prayed." Luke 22:42, "Saying, Father, if thou be willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done." Luke 22:43, "And there appeared an angel unto him from heaven, strengthening him." Luke 22:44, "And being in an agony, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was, as it were, great drops of blood falling down to the ground." Temptation, perasmos, a putting to proof, experience of evil, solicitation, discipline or provocation. By implication, adversity, temptation, try. Jesus told his disciples to pray that they do not enter into temptation. He is telling us that we cannot resist temptation on our own strength or our own righteousness. We must rely only on God to deliver us from the tests and trials in this world. That is what the dark night teaches us. We must rely totally on God. When we begin to rely only on God, that is when the promise comes. That is when the blessing comes. That is when God himself comes. I believe that the Great Tribulation will be the dark night of the soul for everyone on earth, and all at once. If we are wise, we will not rely on our own strength or our own knowledge or anything in this world to save us. We must turn to God with all our hearts, all our minds, all our souls, and all our strength, and rely only on God to provide for our health, our wealth, and our safety. After the dark night came the crucifixion, but after the crucifixion came the resurrection. Luke 22:40. "And when he was at the place, he said unto them, Pray that ye enter not into temptation." If you find these videos helpful, please like and subscribe. Have a great week. Thanks.